Miller's Girl from Jade Haley Bartlett. It's a thriller about a teacher and student slowly becoming infatuated by one another. Quick disclaimer, for the sake of reviewing this movie, I'm going to talk about some potentially sensitive topics, including student-teacher relationships and quite sizable age gaps. The end of the trailer for this film actually shows the official website for the film, which provides several resources on the subject matter. In the same vein, I've provided a link to the website below for anyone that may or may not need those resources. But in this movie, we follow a student and teacher at a high school. Some people online seem to have thought this was a college, but no, this is a high school. Mr. Jonathan Miller, played by Martin Freeman, is a married literature teacher who is quite taken by his new student, Cairo Sweet, played by Jenna Ortega. The two of them bond over their love of literature and develop a questionable relationship as they do things together that would normally seem platonic, but it's the fact that he is her much older high school teacher that makes it a bit abnormal. Like sharing smokes with her and bringing her places outside of school. Yeah, those are things that wouldn't fly where I went to high school. But the moral ambiguity behind their seemingly innocent and platonic relationship is what really made the movie interesting. This movie has issues, but looking past that for now, I still want to talk about its core. This movie is about validation. It's about two people who feel unseen in the world, each of them finding acknowledgement in someone who ended up filling them with desire. This is an example of how emptiness, when mixed with such desires and commonalities, can cloud one's judgment. If there is a lesson being taught here, I'd say it's just a reminder of the importance of moral judgment, emotional maturity, and accountability. And to clarify, I'm not saying all of this about one character or the other. This actually applies to both of them, just in very different ways based on their decisions. So the apparent sexual tension between the two leads is really what carried the movie through the first half. The whole thought of will they, won't they, mixed with the ambivalence toward this potential relationship, does really leave you in anticipation. The music was a big player through all this. Some people might not realize how important music is to a movie, but it can completely affect how you think about what's happening on screen. For much of the movie, the music was very innocent and playful and romantic, and under this light, you can't help but kind of root for the two of them. I'm not saying I wanted them to end up together, but when you see these two sharing good moments together in a gothic setting with a touching piano piece playing, it's totally hypnotic. Of course, the good times don't last forever. If you watch the trailer, you'll know that Cairo gets spiteful when her advances are not reciprocated. This is where the movie really lost me because the tension between her and Mr. Miller is what really made the movie interesting. Not only was the tension gone, but their whole dynamic that was established was completely gone, being replaced by the stakes of the movie that just didn't feel high enough. So this is Jade Bartlett's filmmaking debut. Directorially, the movie was pretty solid. There's good visual style and visual storytelling. And again, the music choice paired with the visuals contributed to a very beautiful Southern Gothic atmosphere. But as far as screenwriting goes, that's kind of where the movie fell flat. Most of these characters have the same provocative and crass personality. The worst thing about this movie is actually what some people might like the most, and that is Cairo. Her dialogue is so overwritten and overly eloquent, it's just impossible to suspend your disbelief in a high school kid talking like this all the time. And even when she's not vomiting verbiage, she's vomiting total melodrama that stoops to borderline Riverdale and Twilight levels. This movie does that thing that politicians do where they heavily shroud the monotony of their narrative with eloquence so that the listener has to decipher what they're saying. This attempt to make what Cairo's saying sound less like cliche teen drama dialogue kind of worked, but also not really. She's still being cringy with these weird notions around Jonathan that, at times, were seemingly fabricated out of nowhere. Especially in the end, where she might as well have had the ghost of Shakespeare enter her body and express her emotions for her. So Cairo's dialogue is bad, but it's actually established very early on just how bad it's gonna be through this very edgy and somber monologue. So the movie doesn't mislead us. It says right from the get-go, yeah, this movie is like Riverdale, but the kids have the dialogue of a 45-year-old playwright. So with that, it was actually easy to immerse myself in the mediocrity and actually get into it. It was bad, but it was kind of fun. Kind of like how some people like cheesy horror movies because the badness is just kind of fun to relish in. So at first, it felt like the movie wanted to be a character study of Cairo Sweet, but by the end of the movie, she was so completely different from how she was in the beginning that it kind of just felt like they were writing a different character. She pivots so hard halfway through the movie that I can't rationalize calling it character development. It just really felt like bad writing. Also, their Southern accents, like 95% of the time you don't hear it, but occasionally they'll pronounce something that sounds slightly Southern, and each time you just go, oh right, this is a Southern Gothic. They're just not doing it very well. So when the trailer for this film dropped, there was a bit of controversy around it, a lot of chatter about age gaps, taboo relationships, and whether or not they're appropriate. As always, I'm not here to weigh in on whether or not I think the movie's problematic. I'm just here to watch movies and then report back to you. But of course, I do welcome any thoughts about said topics down in the comments. Just be civil is all I ask. So overall, this movie was painfully melodramatic and occasionally laughable, which unfortunately detracted from the movie's otherwise strong directorial style. This movie is disappointing. It's arguably terrible, but I had some fun with it at times, so I think that's the fairest rating that I can give it. If you are a fan of the rising young star Jenna Ortega, or if you like heavy eroticism in films, you might enjoy this one. If neither of those things describe you, then you can sit this one out. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please consider giving it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Argyle.